In this episode, we delve deep into the Eastern Series of these 2021 NHL Playoffs, with the Pittsburgh Penguins versus the New York Islanders and the Washington Capitals versus the Boston Bruins matchups. As well, hit the ground running on the exciting Sunshine State Showdown between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, with guests Courtney Loughlin, Matt Vensel, and Rob Taub. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Borjaranov, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, go to jablamsports.com, see all our podcasts, and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on this show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts, and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for some trending, and now, of course, we're going to talk about the series, of course, but let's go with what's trending. And before we get to an Eastern series, and that's all this episode is the Eastern series, we will talk later on with Matt Vensel and Rob Taub about, of course, the Penguins and Isles series, and shortly we'll get to the Capitals and the Bruins. But first off, the Sunshine State series. I'm going to intro you, Courtney, but I do want to ask you this one question. I Googled Sunshine State series, and what do you think just pops up?
Panthers, Bolts. I don't know.
No,
nothing hockey.
The first thing that pops up is like BMXing. BMX biking, and I guess it's really popular, and I guess it's a good place to do because the weather's always good in Florida. I was like, oh, okay. But then right after, it's showing the great article by the Canadian Press, for me at least. I guess it's geographical. It might change, right? So great Canadian article. And of course, the article states, intensity from the outset. I love it, the outset. And you're talking about the sun. Good job on the article title. Love it. Outset in the Sunshine State Playoff Series. And of course, Courtney, is this series blowing your mind like it is for myself?
Yes. And I have to be honest too, the first day and 2 days of playoffs were kind of crazy. You had 3 overtime games, and then you go down to Florida and you've got the Panthers and the Bolts. And it was funny because I was sitting watching that game with my dad because we love to watch hockey together. And we were like, what is going on? We're like, is this game not insane? And I remember actually when I was back in grad school, I did a sports management program. And in that, of course, like I loved hockey. So for some reason, all of my projects were around NHL teams. And I remember doing a project on the Florida Panthers because they were struggling so much at that time about getting butts and seats and fans in the stands. And I was doing like all these creative things to get fans down there. And now look at the team. I mean, incredible. They've got not only just they have fans in the stands, but they've got the coach, they've got the players, and now they're playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's just like, I think it's one of the coolest stories to follow in this NHL playoffs, because who would have thought both teams in Florida, and it was just an incredible game. It was like the pace, the hits, the physicality, the goals, like everything. It was such a fun game to watch. Just like, in my opinion, most of the games in the NHL series so far have been just fun and entertaining games to watch.
Oh, it just seems like it's all coming together. I love that Dave Randorf, who usually does Battle of the Alberta games. That's what he used to do. And now he's doing this one. The inaugural. Finally, we get to see Tampa Lightning and the Florida Panthers see the matchup in the playoffs. And they're both very good now. It's fabulous. Everything's coming together for Florida. And, of course, Tampa, how great they've been for a while now. And them winning the Cup last year. You got this rivalry. And also, the other thing, I don't want to bring up COVID, but I kind of have to, because the Panthers, of course, we all know about the attendance problem and everything.
Yep.
And then there's the COVID jokes because they can't fill up the stadium, but now they can't keep them away. It's like, sorry, we can only do 50% capacity. And
I know.
it's like they're keeping them at bay and they want to get in. And oh my goodness, it's phenomenal. And I don't know what it is, but if it's playoff time, if it's like we're getting away from COVID, we've got fans in the stadiums, it just seems perfect and it's awesome to watch, and the players are just taking it to the next level. It's playoffs, but again, with the fans back, it just triggers something else in the players, and the intensity ramps up even more. I'm just so excited. I don't know. I can't hold it back.
No, and it's awesome, and it's so good for the sport, right? Like if you would have said, like to your point, everyone's making the COVID jokes about Florida, and now they can't keep people out of it, and they're at max capacity at their half capacity, and fans just want to come in. But like 5-10 years ago, like they never would have been in conversation with Florida, right? And the Panthers, and they were struggling even to survive. They had the seat coverings in the upper bowl, right? And now they're in the playoffs, and they're a fun team to watch. And I think it's great for the sport. It's great for the league. It's great for the growth of the game. And especially I think for Florida, it's just great for everybody to have that kind of caliber game happening down there. Not BMX. It's not BMX. It's hockey that's happening. I didn't know that. That is a fun little trivia question. That's awesome.
But then there's the I'm going to put it easy and say the bastard. That is Braden Point, because we have overtime game number 1, overtime game number 2, overtime game number 3, a minute and a half left. And Braden Point, damn you. Why do you have to stop from us having another overtime game? This would have been like the overtime playoffs.
I know.
Every single game going to overtime. We were getting the fans back. Oh my God. And this game was so phenomenal. Oh my goodness. And then he has to do that. And it was a great goal, but what was even more great was the Jonathan Huberdeau setup to Owen Tippett. And I enjoyed watching Owen Tippett too when he played for over here. I'm in the GTA, I'm in the Greater Toronto area, and Owen Tippett used to play for Mississauga, the Steelheads, I guess it was. Yeah. And oh my goodness, he was great there. But he's like, oh, the puck is right here on my stick. Thank you, Jonathan. I'll just put it in. And that was a fabulous goal. Oh my goodness.
And I love that everyone, again, you always look on Twitter and see what everyone's talking about, what's everybody saying. And everybody is basically slamming the Tampa Bay Lightning because they're $20 million over the cap with Kucherov and Stamkos coming back, right? And you got to remember that the cap doesn't exist in the playoffs, right? And so now you have these guys that missed the whole season. I mean, the Caps could do that. You want to sit Alex Ovechkin out and you want to sit Backstrom out for the entire season and then bring in some other ringers and then play them in the playoffs. But I think a lot of fans have forgotten that those players didn't play all season and Tampa Bay still got to where they were without them, right? And so, yes, are they $20 million over the cap? Yeah, but that's the rule. The NHL doesn't count the cap in the playoffs. And so, like, I saw a lot of people being like, this should be investigated. How are they able to do that? But it's the rule. It's the NHL. And they were without Stamkos and Kucherov for the entire season. I would not want that as a Tampa Bay Lightning, right? As the team or the organization or the fans. And they made it to where they were without those two key players.
Yeah. And fantastic job by John Cooper. And I still think he's an MVP in my mind is Victor Hedman, Vasilevsky. They're phenomenal. They got there without them. And I don't remember anybody complaining when Patrick Kane and Chicago Blackhawks did this exact same thing.
You're right.
And it's been done before. I've been already talking, like, we're going on a whole nother tangent, but I've been talking about for years about why don't we just have a luxury tax? I'm still on the luxury tax bandwagon here. I've been saying it for over 15 years. The original 6 teams, the other teams that make the money, you get taxed double, whatever it is, even triple. I don't care. But if they can pay for that, and then that money can go to some of the lower teams that aren't as profitable, or building up hockey, in those communities that need to be raised and stuff. That's where that money should go to. Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
Not a bad idea. I haven't heard that one before. I kind of like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think some things in certain communities and women's hockey need to get some more money funded. Yeah. This is a way to do it. Do it, NHL. Do it. All right, let's go. Let's go to why I brought you here. So, Courtney, you're in Chocolate City, right? They call it Chocolate City, right?
No, that's Hershey.
Oh man, it's so close. So
well, it's like the same. Hershey Bears, Caps, the farm team. It's like the same thing. I'm in DC.
Yeah, you're in DC.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show again.
Thank you.
You've been a host and analyst on NBC Sports Washington, covering, of course, the Capitals. You can catch her new podcast, Family Faceoff. What have you guys been doing recently on the podcast?
So I will say that my dad and I took a little break because he, as much as he hasn't been traveling, so he works with the Caps and he calls their game on NBC Sports Washington. And I think that he thought this season would be a little bit easier without the traveling, but the schedule with every other day, I think, caught up with him. So we took a little break, but we're going to get back at it in the playoffs in the next week or two. So it's fun. We like to have a lot of fun. We talk about hockey. We talk about beer. We talk about whiskey. We talk a little bit of lifestyle. But I don't think my dad knew what to expect with this season coming up in the schedule and the games. But it's good. We like it. We have a lot of fun. It's fun, like father-daughter commentary on the Caps.
Well, what's your favorite DC type whiskey out there?
That's a great question. So actually this past weekend, our family, we run a nonprofit also for rare cancers. And we actually released a whiskey from 1-8 Distillery or 1-8 Distilling in Ivy City. So I might have to say that one because I gave that one a try and it was awesome.
All right. Nice. 1-8 Distilling. Yeah. Nice. Beautiful. Yeah. And you can find Courtney on Twitter at CourtneyL_Caps. Fan of the show, Maple_Leaf_fan asks, Caps are one, if not one of the oldest teams in the NHL. Do they have enough in their old legs to make another run at the cup while Ovechkin still has it?
So that is a great question. And we've been hearing that a lot, like even throughout the entire season. Are the Caps too old? Are they too slow? I got to be honest. I was one of the lucky, of 5,200 fans that was able to be in Capital One Arena for Game 1 on Saturday night between the Caps and the Boston Bruins. And I was pleasantly surprised about how fast the Caps looked. I mean, the first 10 minutes, I thought the Caps dominated the Bruins. They were physical. And I think that's the thing. When the Caps play a slower brand of hockey, right? They're not the Colorado Avalanche. They're not Vegas, where they do have those young legs that are flying around the ice everywhere. They do play a heavy brand of hockey. I do think the window is closing. The window is closing quickly on when they can win the cup. This year, I'll maybe give them one more year. And then I think it's time to rethink those pieces because I do think that they are not getting any younger. But I was pleasantly surprised I think it was one of the fastest games I've seen them play. And they were fast, they were physical, they were moving the puck. And I think if they can do that, they can have some success in the playoffs.
When we talk about the core and you still want to keep Ovi, who is one or two of the veterans that you think could possibly get moved to slightly at least get younger, to still keep Ovi in contention of a cup, but like gel with some younger players, younger talent?
That's a great question. I believe that they are going to keep that core together of Ovechkin, Backstrom, Karlsson. You do have Tom Wilson, who's young. They got rid of Verana, brought in Mantha. The name that's been thrown out there a lot is Kuznetsov, right? And I don't know if they would necessarily need to bring in a much younger guy because he's not that old. Yes, he's not in his early 20s. But do they want to trade him and do they want to get something different for him? I think that would be the guy that kind of my eyes are on, especially with the expansion draft coming up. And I think a lot of people had thought Oshie might be on the block for that to go to Seattle since Washington is his home state. But I think Oshie has proved himself. And this, again, my opinion, I think Oshie he is a tried and true. He will do everything. He is a yes, coach. Yes, sir. You watch the type of minutes that he plays. And so I think it will be interesting, especially in the off season. I'm watching number 92 and what the Caps are going to do with Kuznetsov, I think for sure.
Again, talking about that older team, we saw a fantastic performance by Craig Anderson between the pipes. He's turning 40 soon, folks. It's ridiculous. We will talk right after this about Vitek Vanacek. But in my opinion, I don't know if he was ready, but he looked all right in game one. Yeah. It looked like he might not have seemed maybe fairly confident. We've seen the gif or that image of him falling back into the net, and some of the pucks kind of trickled, were in his legs, and it wasn't great. It was a great performance overall, but what can we expect from Anderson and this team going further?
I mean, at this point, he's got to be the guy, right? Like, we don't really know when Samsonov is coming back. He did practice with the Caps the last couple days, or he was on the ice. But, I mean, he's been out. And the crazy thing is, especially here in Washington, we have no idea what happened to Kuznetsov and Samsonov. They were on the COVID-19 protocol list, but everything has been very buttoned up in terms of what happened, why they were on there. Everybody can make speculations, but like nothing has come out about that. And obviously with Vanacek, that was another unfortunate thing to happen. But I feel like the Caps have been fighting this type of adversity all season long. You had 5 or 6 guys on COVID-19 in January, including Samsonov and Kuznetsov previously. It's interesting because Craig Anderson, he's not a rookie goaltender, right? He's not a guy from the American League that they just called up. He is experienced. He is a veteran guy. I was looking up his numbers. It's insane. He has like some of the best numbers in playoffs. Like his save percentage is .929 of goalies that have played 40 games in playoffs. So I think the big question is, can he be that player that he was back in 2017 when he played in the Eastern Conference Final, for Ottawa?
The Penguins just took it right back from game 7. It was that close. Carlson on one leg. I remember that. He was phenomenal too.
That's right. That was a series where he was limping along. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
So he's a veteran guy, right? And he's even come out and said, he's like, this is what I'm here for, right? I was called in for this position when everything went to hell with Lundqvist, right? I mean, because the Caps had this goalie situation they thought figured out. And then it was just kind of like one thing after another with things happening in net. Thing happens in December with Lundqvist. January, Samsonov gets put on the COVID protocol list, missed several weeks. So Vitek Vanacek is up to the plate. So yes, and you hear this so much, it's this next man up mentality, but for the Caps in the net, it really has been because they can't seem to. That is like the one of the biggest areas where just like everything, there's just like a comedy of errors, just like things keep happening at net. But I don't know if I'm as confident as I was with Vanacek, because I was pretty confident when Vanacek was the starter for game 1. But it will be interesting. I'm excited for the guy, right? I mean, this is like, I think he said his last kick at the can, like to give it a try and see what he can do. And they're all seasoned athletes. They've all dreamt of this moment for their entire lives. And so I'm hoping that he can really step up for the team.
So I guess some of the Capitals players, especially Samsonov and the rest of them, are kind of lucky they're not in a Toronto market where you have some media types and even some crazy fans. They're stalking their grandmothers, or they're asking the hot dog vendor what they ate for breakfast that day. So they're lucky that isn't happening.
Although I did see some Canadian announcers, what they said about Vanacek. I did see that.
Kelly Rudy. Yes.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that. What happened exactly on that play? Like, it was a big face-off, quick win.
Yep.
Jake DeBrusk shot it past Vanacek, and then it just seemed like he did the splits and he pulled something.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's just nuts. At the beginning of the playoffs, we've seen this a couple times for such a young kid, like this happening to him. Oh man, that just blows my mind. What's the update there?
The update is that he's day to day. And I feel like if it was worse, I don't even know, would the Caps even come out and announce it at that point? I don't know, right? Because at this point, keep it behind closed doors, say that it's day to day. It was weird, right? Because it was like a routine movement. And I know that's what everybody's saying. up in Canada too, is that it was a routine movement, and that's what goalies are used to. They're like, that's like what they do, right? And unfortunately, there's no update on him. If it is in fact what it looks like, which is some sort of serious-ish groin injury, I would say it's Craig Anderson's net. And if Craig Anderson wins game 2, I think it's Craig Anderson's net, right? Like, and that's why I don't know what's going to happen if and when Samsonov is even ready. I think if Anderson keeps winning, you got to stick with a hot goalie. It's got to continue to be Anderson.
We also saw Alex the Great, Alexander Ovechkin, go out hard hitting, playing full tilt.
Yeah.
Is he 100% then? Because we have seen him out, of course, right before the playoffs.
I mean, I don't know if any player is really 100% by the playoffs, right? I think it's so hard by the end of the season. Maybe this season's a little different because it was only 56 games. I thought that the way that he was playing in game 1, I thought he looked fine. He was hitting guys. He was drilling guys. The first shift, he came and he crushed a guy in the corner and along the boards. I'm confident that, and again, Alex Ovechkin is such a horse, right? Like, he's so big, he's so powerful, he's so strong, that I don't think it's anything serious. But again, like, you never know. You hear these things. I mean, Carlson playing on one leg, right? In Ottawa, you hear these things about these players never being 100%. And even John Carlson here in Washington said that he missed like the last game or 2 before the playoffs even started. And he said, yeah, I have a lingering lower body injury. And by the time you get into playoffs, you hope that everybody's full strength, but it's part of the sport that you just never know who is 100% at that point in the season.
It's the playoffs, and you play with whatever you've got, and
you do.
Oh man, it is exciting.
And even talk about playing with whatever you got. I know that the Caps just their Black Ace, they just called up Connor McMichael from Hershey. So it'll be interesting to see if he's some guy. He was a Black Ace in the bubble last year for playoffs. And I don't know if that's a sign that they don't know what's going to happen with Kuznetsov, is how he's going to, I mean, he's been off the ice for almost nearly 2 weeks. And you know just as much as anybody that, like, you can't just step back on the ice and be like, okay, I'm fine. And especially in playoff hockey, right? Like, no matter how many workouts you do, how many bike things you do, how many times you're outside lifting weights or whatever, it is not the same as getting on the ice and skating. And so I would, especially when the Caps called up Connor McMichael, I don't know if that's a sign that it could be maybe a replacement for Kuznetsov. I don't know. That will be interesting to see if and when he gets into the lineup, if at all.
I guess not everybody can be Nikita Kucherov.
That's true. Great point. Yeah, freaking first shot, first game, first goal. Like, it's insane. You're right.
And on that point, again, thank you for joining me, Courtney. You can find her on Twitter at Courtney L_Caps. It was great having you on again.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to playoffs. This was great that we're finally here. Playoff hockey. I know we didn't think if we were ever going to make it here, but we are, and fans are in stands in some arenas, so it's great. So I'm happy that playoffs are back.
I wish we had fans for the Montreal-Toronto series. After what is it? Since 1979, we've been waiting for this matchup. Everybody cares. I believe there's still a rivalry. Well, amongst the fans for sure.
Yeah.
But wow, it would have been great to have fans there. But well, I regress.
Maybe it's for the better.
Yeah. Next up, the series, the other one in the East. This series is going to be a long battle between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders. So let's discuss this entertaining battle of a series. Joining us to talk about this Eastern series are Matt Vensel and Rob Taub. Matt's a Penguins reporter for the Post Gazette. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Vensel. And Rob is a writer at the Isles blog. You can find him on Twitter at @rtaub_. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me. Let's do this.
Right before I get to my questions, I like to throw it out there to social media. And on Twitter, at Maple Leaf Fan, so that's Maple_Leaf_fan. He thought of some pretty good questions, and thank you for putting it out there. He mentions how banged up the Pittsburgh Penguins are, and before we get to all the other banged up players, I do want Matt. What is the update on Evgeny Malkin?
Well, it looks like he's probably going to sit out game 2 again. I mean, the Penguins are not sharing any information about him. He again practiced. He's practiced, every single practice for the most part since he left the regular season finale. But at what's today? Monday's practice. He was out there, but he didn't do line rushes again, and that's always a pretty telling sign that he's not going to be in the game. I mean, we'll see if things change at the morning skate on Tuesday, but that certainly suggests that there's a decent chance he's not going to be back for game 2.
And how long do you think? Do you think he will be probably in this series by the end of it, or?
You would think. Mm-hmm. I mean, because he's on the ice. They're having him go through, sometimes strenuous workouts before, during Saturday's practice beforehand. He got a pretty strenuous 45-minute workout. So, I don't know if this is a scenario where he experienced some sort of setback in recent days, or if just they tried to push him to be ready to go and he couldn't quite get there. But, the fact that, it's not a rest situation, that he's out there and skating and on the ice certainly suggests that he's at least going to try to give it a go at some point.
He also asks if Tristan Jarry is okay. And I know you mentioned in your article that Jarry tends to bounce back in an off game, and of course, all of the articles that you guys write most recently we'll have on our episode page. This is season 6, episode 23 already for this season. I know last week too on the podcast for our preview for the playoffs, Dennis Bernstein and even Joe Yerdon said that they don't believe in Jarry as a goalie that can take this Penguins team far. You said that he can bounce back. Sullivan announced that he will play game 2. Can he be that goalie for the Penguins that they need to win this round to go deep?
The answer is I don't know. I mean, look, that's lofty kind of stuff to be a Stanley Cup winning goalie. I mean, only a handful of guys can do this. I do think he's shown flashes over the past 2 years where he's capable of playing like really super well for 6 weeks or so. He did that last year, got him to the All-Star game. He had a good stretch in March and April. But the Stanley Cup playoffs are a different deal. It's hard to say what exactly his issue is. I mean, he was dealing with a minor upper body injury that he could be playing through. He also, in past times this season where he had to come into the net after a longer layoff, he wasn't at his best. But he certainly never looked comfortable at any point in game 1. And you could make a case that all 4 of those goals were stoppable. So yeah, he's bounced back at various points throughout the year, including after a really poor start, but it's a different deal in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, he won a Memorial Cup as a junior player. So certainly that suggests a little something, but Stanley Cup playoffs are a different deal. So I guess we'll see.
At Maple Leaf at Maple_Leaf_fan also asks, who will fill in for Anders Lee and for the Isles to go deep? So Rob, is there someone that can kind of be that prototypical type of power forward or the leader that these Islanders need?
I think you saw it yesterday, and it's Kyle Palmieri. Mm-hmm. He was fantastic yesterday, and a lot of people were talking about how bad he was once the trade happened, 2 goals in 17 games. But he was brought here to play in the playoffs and to perform in the playoffs. I wrote about it a few weeks ago. I said he will be judged by how he performs in the playoffs. And what he did yesterday was phenomenal. He was their best forward on the ice. If they can get even the slight bit of what they got from him yesterday in every single game moving forward, depending on how long they think their run's going to be, he is the worthy replacement for Anders Lee. And if I had a secondary option, it would probably be Brock Nelson, because he plays that same style as Lee, not as physical, but more he has that scoring touch around the net, big body, can score on the power play, even though I don't know what the hell the Islanders were doing on the power play yesterday. But those are the 2 guys I look for. And so I think Lee and Kyle Palmieri are my 2 picks.
we saw Palmieri play that well, and you mentioned it, and in your article it was pretty good that I read, that he was shining in the Game 1 thriller. What gets him to put up that next gear? We watched him during the regular season, and he has some games where he's off, some games where he's on. Does he like that Game 1? He had that next gear. Can he keep playing with that next gear on for the remainder of the series consistently enough and further on?
I definitely think he can. Look, what Barry Trotz said about him before the series started, that he expects him to score. Sometimes it takes a while for a guy to kind of get adjusted after a trade. And look, I know he was only moving from the Devils to the Islanders.
Matt, Penguins dropped Game 1 again. What is it up with the Penguins with that haunt this team that they just consistently are losing Game 1s?
Yeah, historically for a team that has won 5 cups, I mean, they haven't been super great in Game 1s of series all time. But there's something different about this team the last 3 years, and it's hard to put a finger on it in terms of not being able to bounce back. I mean, this year could be different. They certainly have a different feel this year, but the past 2 years, they had a very stunning, lack of pushback in both the 2019 sweep against the Islanders and also up against the Canadiens in the bubble. So it's hard to quantify something like that. I mean, you can look at this team and say it has a different makeup. They're faster, more mobile blue line compared to other teams, but we can talk about X's and O's all we want, but it's that lack of pushback that we didn't see the last 2 years. And, we'll see if the team's any different. Because, if this is another quick series, I suspect we'll see pretty significant changes in Pittsburgh.
Wow. Where do the changes start then? Where would you believe that they start?
Well, I mean, they have a new front office, so part of it stems from there. Yeah. Mike Sullivan's one of the top 5-7 coaches in the league. But there could be philosophical differences there. Certainly Brian Burke likes big burly guys. Mike Sullivan likes team based on speed. So that's part of it too. But also, I mean, Malkin and Letang have 1 year left on their contracts. So they'll be extension eligible. So the Penguins are going to have to make decisions on their long-time future then. So I just think with the new front office coming in, they're going to want to put their fingerprints on this team. So I think, if the Penguins lose this series, especially if they just have another no-show, that gives Ron Hextall and Brian Burke the green light to maybe make significant changes.
Wow.
Sid's not going anywhere. Don't worry.
I know you mentioned Sid's not going anywhere, but it leads me to believe Gino could be. Is it possible? Do I have to take my jersey in, my 71, and change it up and put a new crest on the front? Is it possible?
Well, he does have a no-move clause, but he's also a proud guy. And if the Penguins, said we don't plan to re-sign you, and that signals we really don't want you around, I think he could waive that. So we'll see. Obviously, these are big ifs, but I wrote something a few days ago just how these three are running out of chances together, and it's not there's a non-zero chance this could be the last run for those three guys together, and Sullivan as well.
It's battle time. Rob, who can shut down Sidney Crosby and why on the Isles?
If it's not Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock, it's JG Pageau. From what I saw yesterday, looking at the stats, Pageau faced up with Crosby in the face-off circle. I believe it was 11 or 13, 20 of 26 of his attempts. But he is their main shutdown guy when it comes to Crosby. He can match Crosby's speed. He could be as physical as Crosby with the way Crosby likes to play and his movement. So I got to go with JG Pageau if not for Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock. But that was just a 1-game sample size. Over a 7-game, it'll be the two defense. It'll be Pulock and Pelech more than anyone else.
Matt, how can Sidney get around that?
Well, I think the first half of the game, he was all over the place. I mean, I think you could say he was probably the best player on the ice and created a bunch of chances. Very easily could have had another goal there on the power play. I just think for him, it's more of a question of, is he going to be able to sustain the energy that we saw? I don't think many teams are able to shut him down completely, although the Islanders did a couple years ago, and the Kazikas line had a lot to do with that. But, I think Sid's going to have a good series, even if they lose. He just kind of has that look to him. I think for me, the question is who else is, who's going to step up behind him. And if Islanders do shut Crosby down and Malkin isn't available or isn't the guy that we've seen over the years, I think the Penguins could have some serious concerns about depth scoring.
Depth scoring is a good question. I didn't mind having Kasperi Kapanen on the Leafs occasionally, but it does seem like he has something about him that he just does score big goals. Does he not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the flair with which he plays. He's obviously a pretty energetic guy. I don't know. I mean, I've never seen, at least in my time covering their team, a guy who's so good at just getting behind the defense for breakaways. I mean, obviously he can fly, but he just has like a uncanny knack of knowing when to leak out without, being complete cherry picking, like timely. So the question for me with him is what happens if teams take the rush away? Like, is he going to be able to contribute off the cycle game? In the zone, that's where I've had a question about him since the trade happened. And, but most of his offense came in transition during the regular season. And obviously the goal he got in game one as well.
Mm-hmm. Rob, Barzal, we didn't see that many flashes of his brilliance. When is the highlight reel money man Barzal going to show up in this series?
Well, hopefully it's tomorrow. I think what happened yesterday, I think maybe there are a little bit of jitters. I know this is his third postseason in his career. I think usually when it comes to the first games of the postseason, he tries to maybe feel out where he can find his time and space. It was the same way in the bubble last year in the qualifying round against Florida. In game one, he was a no-show. He actually didn't really start like revving it up until game 4 when the Islanders really needed to shut everything down. But I honestly think tomorrow we'll see a much better Matthew Barzal. I mean, one shot in 68 minutes to play yesterday, that's not going to cut it. Mm-hmm. But I also think the entire Islanders first line was a no-show yesterday, other than Leo Komarov, who was fantastic yesterday. He had 14 hits. He was really the only guy going on that line. But if the Islanders are going to win this series, they're going to need Barzal to really step it up tomorrow, because they're going to have to weather the storm again defensively, because Pittsburgh is going to come out guns a-blazing after they lost game 1, because that's how it usually goes in game 2, especially once the team loses home ice advantage. So I'm looking for Barzal to really, really put on a good performance tomorrow. And if not, then the Islanders could be in trouble.
I find it still odd seeing Uncle Leo next to Barzal on the top line. Do you think it's a perfect fit? Is Trotz just like, I don't know. I know he's such a great coach, but it just seems so peculiar.
I wouldn't call it a perfect fit, but it's the right fit for now, because Komarov he's kind of a Anders Lee 2.0, not in the sense that he can score goals but he's a big body and he can create time and space for Barzal, for Eberle, for his teammates. So he's got that knack in him, and he's a pest. And on a line where you have two guys who are mainly speed and skill with Barzal and Eberle, you need a guy who's going to go in the corners, get dirty, create chaos. And that's what Komarov does. He does all the little things. That's why Barry Trotz loves him. And he lauds him every single day. And all of his teammates, they have nothing but great things to say about him, because he plays the game the right way. He might not play it the most pretty way, but he does it the right way. And that's kind of how the Islanders want him to be. That's why they signed him years ago. That's why Lou brought him in, because he knew he needed guys who were going to be grinders and get in there. And also he's a leader out there. He's a great leader. He does on the bench, on the ice. And if he can my thing is, if he can get under Crosby's, get under his skin a little bit in game 2, the Islanders have a really good chance of coming home with a 2-0 series lead.
Matt, how can they keep containing Matthew Barzal?
I don't know that you can't. I mean, I love Barzal. I think he's so much fun to watch. And he certainly hurt the Penguins a couple of years ago. I did find it interesting that they had obviously Letang matched up against him a lot. That's really not that surprising, but Matheson as well. Those are the Penguins' 2 strongest skaters. Very few. I was going to say defensemen. I think skaters in general skate the way Matheson does. So they certainly were trying to match those two guys up against his speed, and I think they did a good job. They didn't do a great job in transition, but they did a pretty good job in transition on him. So, I don't know if they're going to be able to continue to keep him under wraps. I know he and Eberle have really tormented the Penguins over the past 3 years. So I'm not sure that's going to be a matchup to watch, but I don't think it's going to be a quiet one for Barzal. I think there's going to be at least a few moments in this series where he has some highlight reel plays and maybe scores or maybe comes darn close.
Before we go, Rob, I know Ilya Sorokin looks pretty good between the pipes, but what is the update on Semyon Varlamov?
It's still up in the air. I think if he's healthy tomorrow, Barry Trotz said he was close earlier today. If he plays tomorrow, he plays tomorrow. If he doesn't, the Islanders are in good hands with the way Sorokin played. Second game is always much different than the first in a series. He's got that first one out of the way, and he's been in big games before when he was in the KHL. But if Varlamov is healthy, they're going back to him. So we'll just have to wait and see come game time tomorrow.
You can find them on Twitter at @rtaub for Rob and at Matt Vensel for Matt. Thank you guys for dropping by again.
No sweat. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank all our guests this week. Courtney, wow, it's always a pleasure having you on. I always have so much fun talking to you. Let's hope the Capitals can get Kuznetsov back and find a netminer to get them those big saves. But wouldn't it be a fantastic story if that was Craig Anderson? As well, thanks to Matt Vensel and Rob Taub for battling it out, just like the Penguins and the Isles are. I won't be shocked at all to see the Islanders win this series. It's why I didn't pick anyone in the playoff pool from this East Division. Well, except for my enforcer, Tom Wilson. Oh, if you want to check out our hockey pool, go to the website, jablamsports.com/playoff-pool to see how I picked, as well as some of my friends and experts. Remember, if you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode, or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at Russia98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. If you want, you can also contact us on our website. You can use the hashtag at Jablam Sports, Jablam Sports, that's JABLAM, and our website is jablamsports.com/contact for our contact page there. Please check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode, including this one. And you'll get our guests' info and links to things we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Also, follow us on our Facebook group, Jablam Sports. Check us out, folks. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.